So good morning, everyone. My name is Paweł Wodziński. I'm the director of the Biennale Warszawa. And I have a pleasure to open today's meeting and welcome everyone who will take part in the conversation and our audience, of course. As you know, today's meeting is entitled "There Are No Spectators," and it accompanies the exhibition "We Protect You from Yourselves" by Democracia, the art collective addressing government-sanctioned violence and the injustices of capitalism. Through their interventions, Democracia points at violation of civil and human rights under the guise of seemingly democratic governance and explores the politics of policing. In the exhibition in Warsaw, the Syrena collective also participates. Syrena is an autonomous space for initiatives based in a reclaimed tenement house at 30 Wilcza Street in Warsaw. This space functions as a place for non-commercial activities and support for local initiatives and for local residents, of course. The Syrena collective uses its space as a source of direct interventions and confrontation with the politics of the city and private investors who, according to their priority or profit, jointly deny the right. The exhibition is curated by Sylwia Serafinowicz, a curator of Apolitical, a non-profit organization that collaborates with socially and politically engaged artists. Apolitical is a partner of the Biennale Warszawa, which makes us proud. Sylwia is also a writer for art magazines such as After All, Art Forum, Not Third, and author in between 2014 and 2017, she was the curator of the Wrocław Contemporary Museum collection. The first intervention by Democracia in Warsaw took place in July, as you can remember, during the presidential elections. The work Silence was displayed in the underground passage of the Warsaw Metro. The exhibition opened yesterday, so it's the second stage of our collaboration. We were very keen to show Democracia's work because we wanted to open a debate on the politics of security, the role of state services and the police, of course. I have that impression that this role is gradually being strengthened, and the greater the political, social, and economic crisis, the greater the expenditure on mechanism of security, the greater the scope of control of citizens, and the more brutal the methods of action. Today's debate will not be the only approach to this theme. We are planning to organize a conference in November, which will bring together the threads of the politics of security in Poland, in the United States, in Europe, and of course, in Belarus. The Democracia exhibition opens a series of events produced by the Biennale Warszawa, devoted to authoritarian practices in politics, economy, in relation to nature and the environment, and technology. Due to the pandemic, we could not organize an official opening in our space in Warsaw yesterday. So I take this opportunity to thank all those who participated in the preparation, creation of this exhibition. So many thanks to Ivan Lopez and Pablo Espana, to the Syrena collective, to Becky Hachman-Shirwan, Sylwia Serafinowicz, and George Chetwood from Apolitical, Jakub de Barbaro, Ela Petruk, Agnieszka Tiutunik, Marta Michalak, Marek Jerzewski, Klara Duniec, Tadek Perkowski, and Ante Krylke from the Biennale Warszawa. The conversation will be hosted by Sylwia Serafinowicz, so the floor The floor is yours, Sylwia. The digital floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pavel. That was such a lovely introduction, and we are all very grateful to have an opportunity to meet in the space of the exhibition, but also today online and discuss what is happening in the exhibition, but also on the streets of Warsaw, because we have a very, very difficult situation where we can see police on the inside and on the outside. And I'm very happy that we have here Pablo and Ivan to speak about their work, but also Collective Syrena, who created a brief history of violence for the exhibition, an investigation into police brutality and into enabling the process of enabling police that was taking place over the last 30 years. But they also participated yesterday and the day before in the protests on the street of Warsaw. So because we are being joined today by international audience and people who might have not had the chance to participate in those protests, I think it would be great if you could tell a bit more about what is happening in Warsaw right now, about your experiences of the protest. Before I give you an opportunity to do so, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to ask everyone who is joining Zoom, who is not a participant, to keep your call, to keep yourself muted, because that will allow us to have the conversation. But please ask your questions on chat, and then I will ask participants. I will pass those questions to participants. Please feel free to write in English or Polish. I can always translate. And also, we don't have the rights to use your image, so please keep your video off as well. Okay, so now over to Syrena. If you could tell us a bit more about what is going on in Warsaw right now.
Okay, so for the past 30 years, abortion is generally banned in Poland, with 3 exceptions: for the pregnancy that is a result of rape, pregnancy that threatens the health of women, and pregnancy where the future child or fetus is severely sick or disabled. And this third exception was 2 days ago was ruled out of the law. So now fetuses that will be stillborns still have to be carried until they are born. This decision sparkled a wave of protest all over the country, in all the major cities. The feminist groups and all their allies hit the streets and marched. We were also participating in Warsaw in one of these gatherings that started. I have to mention it's all illegal because of the pandemic situation. It's illegal to gather at all. But it started as maybe a 2,000 people gathering in front of this constitutional court that made the ruling, and then it marched through the city to the headquarters of ruling party, and then to the house of the head of the party, who is actually the head of the state unofficially. There was some clashes with the police. Police started the violence by spraying people with pepper spray, and then some people allegedly responded with rocks or eggs or so, and 16 people were arrested this Thursday. A lot more were beaten up or gassed, and another much bigger demonstration happened yesterday. Maybe 30,000 people or so marched again through the street and clashed with police on few occasions.
If I can add something, actually this ruling that was made yesterday, 2 days ago, okay, not yesterday, makes abortion completely banned and illegal, because from the oldest three exceptions, the one that is about seriously ill fetus was the one that was the only one that was used, actually. So there was around 1,000 legal abortions a year in Poland, and I know 90% of them were from this third exception. So abortion happens anyway in Poland, like illegally, or yeah, illegally. It's not a good way to say that. Abortion
Outside of law.
Yeah, outside of law, because it's not illegal to make abortion on yourself. But still, so it doesn't really changes the situation. Like this 1,000 abortion that was really legal, it's a percent of all the abortions that happens a year. But still, it's a symbol of the fact that the state can oppress us again and again and shrink our laws whenever they want to.
It's also important because it can be a turning point, because for the past 30 years, the political mainstream agreed that it's a sort of compromise, that abortion is generally banned, but you can have it if your child, if your fetus is dying, or you are dying, or you are raped. And it was supposed to be some sort of compromise that's a middle ground between legal and illegal abortion. And now the right wing is breaking this compromise, which may result in a positive backlash towards more liberalization.
And if I could say also something about yesterday, so there was a huge march that was ended by one of the leaders around 11 at night. So people went back home, but they were encouraged to do their autonomous actions at night, and today and tomorrow. And for tomorrow for Monday there is another big march planned, and for Wednesday there is a general strike planned. So that's the situation now.
And can you, because something that was surprising to me that's not very obvious is that the police is fining people for gathering, right? Can you say a bit more about that? Why that is, like under what circumstances?
Technically there is no actual legal ground to do it, because we do not have the state of exception introduced yet, the state of emergency, I mean. But starting this spring, as the lockdown came, there is this governmental orders to fine people for various transgressions, like gathering or not wearing the face mask or so. And you can be fined by the police themselves. And if you do not accept, they can pass this to the sanitary authorities, the medical authorities, and then this fine is even much bigger, up to 30,000 zloty. So like 7,000 euro, and this is one of the repressive techniques that is used to just fine people for taking part in gatherings for the past half year. Legally, you cannot meet in more than 5 people group now. And on the side of that, also some people are being just accused of normal violations, like attacking the police or so.
2 days ago, almost everybody was fined with or accused of assaulting a police officer. Like, for I think all the people who got fined got this. So like it shows really that it is nonsense.
And because we were talking about here and now, but also about the last 30 years and Democracia's experience in Spain, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about why you decided to create a collective and what. Well, we heard about your objectives, but how can you act as a collective? What it allows you to do?
It's to us, the question?
Yes,
okay.
Sorry. Syrena,
So our collective was formed almost 10 years ago after the tenants activist Jola Brzeska was kidnapped and murdered, burned alive in the woods nearby Warsaw. She was a tenant organizer who resisted the process of reprivatization in Warsaw, and she was the last one in her house to carry on the fight with the housing mafia. And yeah, she was murdered, and no one like. Everybody knew who is profiting from that, but no one could actually catch the murderer in the act. And the police was also, it later turned out that the police was also helping to, was not doing their job in finding the suspect, but they were doing their job in covering him, destroying the evidence and so on. And misleading the investigation first into the suicide, and then finally concluding it with not finding the culprit. So after this murder, the tenant movement had to radicalize and find some more direct approach to the struggle. And our answer was to squat a house that was empty, that was cleansed of tenants. And for the past 10 years, we occupy it and form, first of all, a house, but also a social center here.
Democracia, if I could ask you the same question, why did you decide to form a collective, and what are your objectives, and why the name Democracia?
Well, it was quite not really connected to an event or to a particular context or situation, but the idea of being a collective, it was kind of more naturally. We basically wanted to, that was kind of a long time ago, maybe probably 30 years ago, so quite. And we basically wanted to start naturally, as I said, putting ideas together, kind of think tank. And also we met when we were students in fine arts, and we just believed that we wanted to get a little bit far from the idea of this individualism or just and rather think as a group, as an open group, in fact, because Democracia is not closed in terms of members. It's really open, and within this, I mean, looking to the history or to the past, there is I mean, we are here talking too, but there is a kind of close bunch of collaborators, people who we've been collaborating and working together beyond these two of us. We all, I mean, about objectives, we all understand art as a communicative action, and we see art as a tool to make propaganda, specifically propaganda against institutional propaganda. And yeah, I mean, nowadays we also, I mean, in this I mean, I don't know a word tendencia, but yeah, I mean, now when we are more and more insulated, we see even more important just to keep grouped and work together and be and not just remain isolated. And I think with this coronavirus stuff and these things that we are living in a turning point where we risk of just get split into individuals and losing our social part. I don't know if I'm explaining properly, Sylwia.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's really important what you just said. But can you say why Democracia as a name?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason it was just to focus our speech and basically we are talking about the system that is organizing us, and to be more specific, the lack of these systems. We also wanted to highlight this the concept, because the Democracia concept is being historically it's been changed and to end into a kind of saying nothing word. So, I mean, when people and institutions talk about democracy, it's kind of talking about a nice brand, and it sounds nice. It sounds social justice and equality, but in fact, it's just a brand to conquer and to install the ultra-liberal politics and economics.
Mm. And is that why, because it's very interesting, I don't think I ever heard democracy as a concept being compared to a brand, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And is that why you often go into like advertising spaces with your work?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. It's I mean, we do aim to take the institutional fields of and to talk from the institutional voice, not from the people's voice. It's kind of taking over these spaces.
Mm. And what prompted you to start working with the subject of the police? Because it's been now, how many years? 8? If not longer.
2013, I think, yeah. No.
2012, where the...
Yeah, 2012.
2012, 2013. We started along with the protests against austerity and the Occupy movement in Madrid. Till these days, we were under soft control, a kind of auto control where the citizens are their own police. But with the protests, we start to see a lot of anti-riot police in the streets, a lot of confrontation and fights with protesters and militants. And suddenly, these hiding inmates of the anti-riot police become principal, become like a mainstream image. And then we start to think about and to show the police as the structure that maintains the system, you know, the legitimate violence of the system.
And do you, because I'm showing now the photographs from the series We Protect You From Yourselves, and it only struck me as we were installing this exhibition that they can be seen as evidence, right, of the means that police used against protesters. Was that one of the thoughts that you had as you were taking those photographs?
Yeah, well, yeah, one of them, as Pavel said before in the introduction, we are obviously living in a crisis time, kind of very dark times, and it's just a kind of equation when crises arise, repression is increasing as well, is strengthened in order to calm people rebellion. So I mean, since 2012, we've been seeing how police is just gaining rights, and in the same time, how the people is being shot by. This all started, just to make a little bit of a context, with gag law in Spain, and you couldn't. While there were people claiming for, I mean, for us it was kind of very important, and I think, and I mean, a question to think about and to claim for it, that you could recognize police identity, that you could have cameras in the police stations, that you could even photograph police, so that you could have something, a proof, just to show whatever, I mean, tortures or brutality. And at this time, identity in anti-rights police started to be hidden, and there was no problem about it. With that, cameras were set off in the police station, and people could not take pictures, while police was constantly filming people in the demonstrations. So we just wanted to highlight and talk about it. And and yeah, we think this is, as also Syrena said, this is we are actually in a turning point time, that things are starting to, I mean, we are having a big step for a police repression. So I think it's time to try to not to lose our rights. Right.
And I'm showing right now 18 portraits. This is a photograph from the exhibition in Warsaw, and you were fined for taking those photographs, right? Like it was 600,000 euros under this gag law that you already mentioned. Could you say a bit more about that situation?
Yeah, there were two two different proceedings or things. One was about injuring police, and a different one was about revealing the identity of police. And the first one about injuring police didn't went beyond. At some point was stopped, so we don't really have problems with that. But the one with the identity issue was taken over by the Spanish Data Protection Agency. This is an international set of agencies coordinated that was in fact created not a long time ago in order to stop big companies from selling data, right? Big multinational companies. And for the first time, this INC was against not a big company, but against individuals. That's the reason why the fine, this 600,000 euros fine, is so high. It's to be thought to not for individuals, but for companies. And the other problem, it was just that they act administratively. So you cannot defend yourself. You cannot really have to pay. It's like a traffic fine. So, so it was a really disgusting period, really, that one. But finally, and fortunately, in the Spanish Constitution, the artistic freedom is on top of the rights, and right below is even more important than identity rights. Okay, so. And that was the end of the proceedings. It lasted 2.5 years, I think, or 3. And at this point, it stopped. If we were, I mean, the sad thing is that if we just were journalists or not artists, and it wasn't an art issue, freedom of expression is not enough. We would be fined if we were journalists, for instance. In fact, there's been, during the whole demonstrations in Spain, there's been plenty of photographers and journalists and that have been caught in prison.
Mm. And is that protection over artists still in place? Because you mentioned that laws are changing and the rights of the police are increasing. Are you still protected as artists in Spain?
Well, I basically think that we've been lucky. I mean, and there was two important things. Pictures were taken before gag law was installed. I mean, if we had took the pictures after, let's say, a year after or 2 years after, or right now, I don't think we will be here talking with you.
Yeah. No, the funny thing is that our lawyer advised us that for this time we were free, but if we show the photos again in Spain, probably we will have problems again.
Mm-hmm.
Because it depends on the on the judge, you know. He had lucky with data protection agency, but if somebody wants to denounce us again, there will be another process.
I see. And can we just go back to this series quickly, and could you say a bit more about the the phrases that people can see on the photographs? Where are they coming from?
The sentences on the photos comes from a text by Luis Navarro. Luis Navarro is a philosopher, is a collaborator of Democracia. For us, it's a kind of key figure because during the 19th, he had a publishing house and he translated and commented the text from the Situaciones International. International Situaciones, sorry. It was a kind of renew the situationist thinking in the 90s, and we start, a kind of relation with him. And he was during the during the mandatory military service in Spain. He was a military police, and we asked him to write a text from the point of view of the policeman during the riot, during a riot or during a demonstration, because we want to use the voice of the own police against the police, not to confront directly, not to say not to the police, but to use the logic. And these sentences are quotes from a long text by Luis Navarro.
And one of the sculptures that is also part of this body of work is that is showing a riot policeman is called Working Class. And then based on that sculpture, you created the work Silencio or Cisha that was also showed in Warsaw. So could you say a bit more about this working class angle of the police?
Okay. Yeah, there is this. This on the ones. We also. Well, there is this discussion about whether police can be considered working class or not on the one side, and if it's and whether they should be, police should be should have unions or not. Well, as to our point of view, we had difficulties in considering police. I mean, working class is more since the. I mean, specifically the police nowadays work is just to defend. It's a tool to against the people, the working class. So, but on the other side, it's since group that hasn't have right to express their own thoughts. It's freedom of expression is completely limited, and there is no unions and so on. We also consider a perfect example of the working class at its lowest rate. Okay. It's this description, in fact, is a starting point to talk about what should be a working class and also what should be the police. I don't know if I just...
Yes, and Pablo, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, okay, the issue of working class is the discussion on police. We think is a key point because in one hand you have all the anarchists and anarcho-syndicalist organizations that they have clear that the police is not working class. But on the other hand, there is another leftist tendencies that consider that, of course, they are working class and they must be, how to say, co-opted or assimilated by the working class, by the masses. In fact, this idea comes from this famous poem by Pasolini, talking about the confrontation between the students and the police during the Italian riots in May 68. He said that he was on the side of the police because the police were the working class, immigrated from the countryside to the cities looking for a better life and so on, and the students were the futures, the future elite, the people who is going to rule the system. But right now it's clear that we can't consider the police, as Ivan said, they are protecting the privilege of the elites. Then we made this sculpture called Working Class with the gesture of the commanding silence. We made that like a kind of a memorial to the better worker for the high classes, you know. Mm-hmm. It's better worker, of course, is the policeman because it's keeping their privilege and so on. Mm-hmm. And this gesture to order silence to the people, we take it from, in one hand, from an institutional image of a nurse demanding silence in the hospital and so on. It's an institutional image, very well known. But in
the photograph, right? The
yeah.
image. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in the other side, we saw the same gesture in a demonstration in Madrid, where the police was demanding silence to the protesters. And for us, it's a kind of image of the work of police to keep silence, to keep the social pacification, and so on. And then we start to use this gesture as posters, just to make clear that circumstance.
That takes me to the investigation really that was prepared and is presented in Warsaw by Syrena, because I think as we were talking about this work and as you were developing it, like I became very aware that the picture of who is pacified and in what way is much more complicated than I personally knew. So if you could talk, Syrena, if you could introduce us to your contribution to your investigation that is being presented right now.
We would love to, but I think first we need to express very strongly that we here our perspective is completely opposite, whether regarding the class aspect of the police. We never saw and we never will see workers in policemen, and I think it is actually interesting question. How do we really read the concept of the class? Because in our perspective, our reading of this word, class cannot be expressed without the class war or class conflict, and it's much more political than sociological concept. And how we consider working class is always connected with the concept of resistance to some sort of authority. And this perspective, obviously, policemen, even if they are someone's employees, here the state employees, they are not working class in the meaning that anarchists or Marxists propose. So, like, as much as we hear your words and we know the Pasolini and so on, we would like to mention that that we cannot sign into this thesis. But moving on to our work.
Maybe sorry, I'll just ask Pablo and Ivan if they.
No, we totally agree with that concept, of course. But in our work, we we include this discussion because we see that, as I said, there is some leftist tendencies that they are talking about the police as a maybe as a working class. We don't agree with that.
Okay,
we are in the same page with Syrena.
So thank you for making that clear, because it seemed like it's an open question.
No, we want to introduce that discussion too in our work, but we agree totally with you.
That's great. Then, if you would like.
Yeah. So, Sylwia, can you once more repeat the question?
Yes, I just thought that maybe it would be good for you to introduce the investigation, the brief history of violence that you are presenting at Biennale Warszawa. Yes, just if you could say briefly about this work, and then we can elaborate.
Okay, so when we were planning this work, we were wondering what do we want to show actually with this brief history, and it turned out that we want to show an institution of violence, and let it see. We have two legs of this work, I would say. So we have institution that is shown above the timeline. So we have numbers, we have budget, we have numbers of policemen. We have also numbers of people in prison, and below the line we have all the violence and I forgot the word, resistance. And the resistance against it. And what was for me interesting during this work, it was how it really was as an investigation. So you went into the threat, and then it turned out that it's more and more and more, and you can look for another, let's call it, evidence of police violence, of another number of police killing, or you can look for another number that shows that police budget is still growing, or that there is less and less police officers that are really
I think Syrena might have frozen for a bit.
Yeah, so
we can hear you again.
and resistance to this violence.
We lost you for a couple of seconds.
Okay. So about these threads that we use to connect, we decided to use them because we wanted to show how it's all connected. So
and did you see a parallel between more funding and more violence? Is it as simple as that, or are there other factors?
Of actual cases, and it's the map that we've made with it is pretty impressive.
Have you heard my question just now? Or we disconnected. So I was asking if you've seen if there's a parallel between funding and more violence, or other parallels that you saw as you were creating this this work.
Okay.
I think it's really complex because you can see that the police impunity is growing, and that the police forces are definitely every year, except the little fall after the crisis, they are having more and more funding since half of the 90s, and they are having more rights, and they are having much more gear that is used for repressive measures. And also you can see that before every bigger political event, like some ultra-globalist protests or the Euro Championships that were also socially protested, but they were also football fans gathering. You can see that the police is arming for the particular confrontations that they are seeing ahead of them. But also I think what we see on this board, and what we would like to express really strongly, is that there is some longer durée of this police violence, and that it's not a matter of past year or past 5 years, as the liberal opposition would claim, that for the past 5 years there is a rule of the ultra-conservative party, and this building of police state is faster and faster now. But what we wanted to show on this board is that since the start of this republic, since the 89, the police violence was present, and it has a longer history. It was used against various social groups. It was used against the political movements, social movements, women, queer people, minorities, migrants, homeless people, Romani people, but also some groups that are forgotten, usually like football fans or so, and also some random people who were just not connected with anything at all, but they were just murdered for some random reasons or by mistake. Yeah, I think the multitude of threats is one of the points of this work. You have this big constellation of various forms of violence, various contexts of violence that police uses, and usually we look at these stories separately, but we sort of wanted to show how parallel they are, and that's one of the conclusions.
And if I can add something, it also got easier and easier to get the information about police violence. So the media image was getting more clear about that, especially after killing of Igor Stachowiak in 2016. It really changed media image. So every killing that was in the police station is now the news. I mean, it means something. We couldn't find so many cases of police killings, especially in the police stations in the 90s. And for me, it's like, it is clear that it is not so that there was no killings. It just wasn't interesting for anybody that the police beats up or kills people in the police station. Also, till I guess 2000 or in the 90s, there are many cases that are described that are starting with drunken police officer did something to somebody, killed somebody or beaten somebody. It doesn't happen now, so that we have no news about this now. So we can see from this that something really changes, but I wouldn't like to value this change, like say it's better or worse. It is just showing that we get different information now than we got before.
Yeah, the investigative journalism or the some sort of social monitoring of the police got much better. But then on the other hand, you have a lot of like extreme case of violence from the beginning of 90s or the beginning of end of 90s, beginning of 2000s. Also, for example, the peasants movement or the workers movement was much stronger and better organized than now. So we have this sort of confrontations that are prevailing on the turn of millennium, and that's getting weaker in the past decade, for example. Also, violence against subcultures, for example, was part of the 90s story. And as we progress towards more modern times, for example, there is new front of like ecological protests that are getting massive, or feminist protests that are getting massive, and violence that is again targeted at these groups. So, sort of looking through this lens of police violence, you can see the shifts in social movements, because oppression is always coming after the resistance.
Yeah, and if I can add something, for me, the saddest thing in making this work was that I had a feeling that we may miss something, because there are social groups that are oppressed by the police, like we mentioned before, farmers or football fans, or people that are basically not in social movements, but they still get the repressions because police hates them and is like basically attacking them all the time, and that we can't connect to these stories, that we won't find them because we're not connected as a movement. So that was the sad part for me, I guess.
Yeah, like obviously this is just a selection of some cases, the ones that were more approachable, or that were better described, or that were for example, in murders, we choose cases that are like super one-sided, obvious, that the police fault is clear, that the person did not resist in any dangerous way, and so on. But if you would like to, if you would like to keep on digging, you can dig out much more, and that is probably how we will carry on with this project in some future.
Because it's very important to say that this work is open to contributions, right? Like there's some information on the board that says that everyone who has a relevant story, like to this history of violence, they can add it. I think one of the most important things that this board is showing is as well the fact that the time frame is between 1989 and now. So the period that we often describe as democracy in Poland, but what it shows is that democracy doesn't mean freedom, and it doesn't mean lack of state violence. So I just had one follow-up thought about it, like to what extent it's possible for you to trace violence or invigilation that is happening online, because we know that the last anti-terrorist act introduced in Poland in 2016 allows much more interference, much more invigilation across the board, like of telecommunications. I was just wondering if what are your thoughts on that?
So like we have some data. So basically what changed after 2015 when the 16, yeah, when the so-called terrorist act was introduced, is that you will never know whether you've been a suspect, whether they invigilated you or not, because before this act, you got after they stopped invigilating you, you got a notice like, hey, we were invigilating you, you are not under invigilation anymore, we didn't find anything. Now you don't get anything. So you basically never know whether you are under this or not. That's the first thing. We get some data that is from the police and other agencies that are allowed to invigilate, and it's just they're sending information that they've invigilated as much data, so they call it data, so you don't really know how they measure it. You can also get the information how many phones are taped and so on, but it doesn't give you answers that you need. And for example, in this case of Stop Bzdurom in this summer, we have evidence that, yeah, we were invigilated, that there were phones that were tapped, and we are followed by phones, by internet. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one thing to add. We left out the secret police out of this board, because that would be like we would need another wall to speak of all the crimes and violations of like internal security agency. That is another institution that is also known for a lot of extreme violations of human rights. But we decided that we can only fit on one wall one institution, so we went with the regular police because it's much more massive and it's much more of a social story, while the internal security is much more of an inside story, the story of social movements or organizers.
Yeah, if I can add something actually, because
We ask Syrena again.
relation builds up responsible for tracking people, not really connected. Like you can see that it's not like that they're so overpowered that you can't do anything about them. I have unstable connection. So usually if one police station knows your address, I think it's okay now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, are we back? No, not really.
I can hear your voice, but you're still frozen.
Okay, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
we have.
Yes.
We don't really do anything interesting. So I was saying that, like, when you have a police notice from one police station, the other police, and they do have your address, the other police station usually don't have this address, so they don't really exchange data and exchange the data between agencies. Well, it doesn't really work. So I have I talk a lot with people about invigilation, and I see people around me are scared about this. And this is something that I usually say, that it's not like they know everything. They really want us to think they know everything and they know so much, but it's not really true, I guess.
It's not centralized yet. fully, but they're working on it.
Well, maybe. I hope no. I hope they never find the way.
I'm personally more paranoid than she. I think you have to always think that they know whatever they want to know, and just carry on with your shit and do things as if they wouldn't exist. Because if they wanna build up some case, they will do it.
Anyway.
One of the stories we have here is for example of like the 3 anarchists who targeted a police station parking with arson, and they were caught in ambush and arrested. This case was like used as argument for the anti-terrorist bill, and this shows this case shows a massive scale of invigilation and infiltration and provocation and so on. But I think it shouldn't stop us. But I wouldn't feel safe about that. I do not feel safe about that.
I think that before we open to questions from the audience, like I would like for us to speak a bit more about resistance and what can be done. I think we spoke quite a bit about the situation as it is now and as it's been this last couple of decades, really. And maybe I would start from asking Democracia about this work about Jeremiah series that can be seen on the first floor of the exhibition, because for me this work kind of creates joins the voices of historic resistance with contemporary one, and it's very multi-layered. So if you guys could tell us a bit more about what can be seen on the picket signs, who are the people who who features in this series, well, why is it called Jeremiah? Because that was one of my questions as well to you as we were working this exhibition. A lot of questions.
You want Paolo to answer that one?
Okay, I can start, and then you.
Okay.
Okay, these photos is a part of our project order, and we collaborate with the new Black Panther party from Houston, and with the Hugh P. Newton Gun Club. These two organizations, well, okay, the new Black Panther Party reclaims its heritage from the former Black Panther Party, but in some sense they are more radicals. They are more, how to say, they don't extend their alliance with other groups as the original Black Panther Party. But we were very interested in the concept of self-defense. This is the H.P. Newton is an armed group that advocates for self-defense, and they used to protect events and demonstrations from the Afro-American community and the Black Panther Party. One of their focus in their struggle is just the brutality from the police. We plan a collaboration with them, a demonstration in where they are holding some picket scenes, forming a kind of poem with different slogans that we selected from, from the liberation movements, emancipatory movements, anarchism, and so on. Mainly from the American dissidency. And well, we want to stage an act of resistance with them. and this is the result of the demonstration. Every individual from the group holding the picket sign that they elected for the demo.
Ivan, would you like to add anything?
No, this already quite.
Maybe for the audience that will see the exhibition, I would just explain why so many, why members of this group are armed, and to just avoid like a simplified reading of the work. It is connected with what Pablo said about self-defense and the right to self-defense. As we all know, like especially after this year, Black Americans are often attacked by the police and killed by the police under the suspicion of holding a gun or having one in their proximity, and it's completely against the Second Amendment, so against the right to own a gun in America. And all the members of this group, they need to have a permit, so it's completely legal what they're doing, but they are acting on their rights to be able to defend themselves and to be able to have the same rights as white Americans. So I thought that was quite important, maybe to add in the context of this work. And I wanted to ask Syrena about the term that I came across, direct action, akcja bezpośrednia, that you use on your website. If you could tell us more about what does it mean, how does it work?
Okay, so I'll start with examples and then I'll just explain the idea that's beyond it. So if you're talking about direct action, you can say that is any way of reclaiming space. It can be graffiti, it can be I know, painting the city or destroying something. It can be blocking, it can be occupying, it can be squatting, as Syrena is a squat. But it can also be direct attacks on things, people that we don't like, on mines, on animal farmings, on prisons, on police station, and also the very persons that we simply don't like. And it's easy to describe direct action as actions that are against something, but I really think it's simplifying, because what I think is that direct actions are actions that are beyond power, so that they are beyond this logic of us and the power that we have to ask about something. So if direct action is, for me, the action that doesn't make demands, that really does not try to ask government, ask people in power to do something for us. It is independent and it doesn't seize any power to them. So because every time you're asking, you're showing in a way who is in power to answer to your question, answer to your demands. So for me, direct action is a way of regaining power, of becoming again, not a subject, but an object. Sorry, not an object, but a subject of, subject is not even off. Like you can be object of law, an object of state violence, object of state power, or you can be a subject and you can be independent. And what I also think about direct action, there is also, this is also really important to me, is that it is something that is for me very human, because it's about being creative. It's about really creating the world that you live in. I think that's it.
Yes, that really brings us back to there are no spectators, slogan behind this meeting, and the fact that it's so amazing that so many people actually are on the streets of Warsaw fighting for the rights. And I would like to open to questions from audience. So I have a question from Anna Martinez, who is an amazing punk activist and musician. I had the pleasure to meet her in person. And she's asking, can we transmute from the word resistance to the word victory?
I would say no, honestly, because I think if you have a victory, you have to have objectives to claim that something's a victory. And if you have a resistance, you have a process that you're in it and it's still open. Yeah, but it's not, of course, it's like we can transmute it, I guess. But for me, it's what is beautiful in resistance is that it's a surprise. You never know what's in the end. You are not like reaching something. You're also not holding this power of having a clear vision that you have to bring into existence.
And yeah, I would like to add that thinking about some major victory or perspective of like final revolution that will end all the problem, as much as it's really pleasing to fantasize about this possible future, I think much more useful perspective is to look for the world as it is, like think more immanently and less transcendently, because there is already these sparkles or little fires of resistance everywhere, and you just need to bring oil where the fire already burns, and not project some bright future, but look at the miserable present time and see the sparkles of the resistance, I would say, in what is already happening. And as I see you expanded your question, do you think it's better to have vanguard groups or a real massive social change? I think this is really a false opposition, because one comes with the other. And as in every social movement I ever seen or read about, it okay, and
I will connect you later.
And I think a strong movement produces a strong group. I wouldn't say vanguard, but maybe radical groups that sparkle from it. And when the movement is weak, you cannot have a vanguard group really, because then it's tragic. And this is interconnected. I think it's some sort of like share of work, more soft organizing or more reformist tactics even. For example, in trade union activism, 90% of work is really boring and reformist and in papers and with law and so on and so on and so on. But also the points of like some transgression come from this. You need to basically organize this massive social movement, because otherwise there is no reason to transgress, to break the law or so, and there is no grant for it. But the other way around also, you will not ever build the greater social movement just from the softcore organizing without this perspective. So I think we need to think about both at the same time.
And we also have a perfect example of this with queer activism in Poland this summer. Like we had a group of really brave people, which what I mean is that we have Stop Bzdurą and really radical activism in Poland. That's a really that's a really radical activism in Poland in this context. And it really change something, you can see the social change. You can see how the way people talk about queer shifted. It really shifted. Like it happened in like 2 or 3 months, and I think that we wouldn't have what we had in the streets yesterday with people shouting "fuck ruling party," "fuck police," and so on yesterday if it wasn't for Stop Bzdurom this summer. So we can really see that, yeah, we have a vanguard group that creates and starts this massive social change. I think it's a nice chain of events.
And Pablo and Ivan, would you like to comment on that?
Okay, well, I have a little problem with the word victory, because the history teaches us that the victories of some revolution comes with the defeat of the part of the revolutionaries, to say, you know. Victory reminds me power, you know? And we don't want to take power. We are against power. Anyway, of course, we all want social change, but I don't want to confuse my desires with reality. And in the reality, I can see a massive movement to change. That's my point.
There's also a follow-up question to you, Pablo and Ivan. How's Democracia being seen from state's perspective? Do you feel that the government is trying to silence you?
Sorry?
Yeah.
How is Democracia being seen from the state perspective? Do you feel that the government is trying to silence you?
Well, I don't know how to say to that. We try to speak out and to make clear our position. We don't care about if the state ban us or we have more or less problems, you know. Of course, if we are talking if we are talking about the art scenes, about the art system, of course, all the projects that involves radical politics and so on have more problems to have visibility than others. But we don't care about that at the end.
I also, I don't really like to play the role of a victim, you know. So, and also it's, I mean, it is true that we don't, I mean, barely have any support or anything, but it is also true that this is a nice position to talk, because it gives you lots of things. I mean, you have a lack of material sources, but it's a good place for speech, for independent speech. So, and it is also that the Spanish context, in terms of, is not right now interested on the things we are talking about. Probably we have more public audience or platform in Catalonia, the Catalan country or Basque country than any place we live in.
There is a comment, speaking of tragic, the slogan that stands out most in the Black Lives Matter protests in the US this summer is "No justice, no peace." It can be seen at once as extremely determined and also extremely tragic, because for many it is hard to believe that there will be justice, and therefore that can be no peace. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that.
I could actually, like, for me, no justice, no peace is a very empowering phrase, honestly, because it's usually connected. It usually ends with "fuck the police," at least in my experience. But what I wanted to say is this: no justice, no peace, for me only refers to state justice, state peace. So you give us no justice, we give you no peace. That's the logic. But it really doesn't mean that we can't have justice in our communities, that if we do things independently, that we won't reach justice. It just means that if you have power over you have no justice. Yeah, that's true, and that's why you respond. But it really doesn't mean that we can't get it.
You can see the comment. There is also a question from Anna. The Zapatista indigenous communities in Mexico did their meetings where even children participated in the decision making. What do you think about it? Salud y revolución social.
If I could say, our collective also had a group of migrant children living here for a long time, and they did take part in the meetings, and I think it's quite empowering. But then also you have to be really careful not to abuse your power and execute your power that comes from the structural difference of age. And I think interesting counterexample is how the Kurdish movement organizes in Rojava and northern Kurdistan, because there is some sort of like youth is separated totally. Youth groups are separated from the main party and they have full autonomy. So as you think sometimes of like feminist separatism that is not open to men, there you have youth separatism, groups that are totally free of adults, totally free of anybody who is actual politician of PKK, giving there any orders or directions or anything. They just organize their things. Sometimes it is different from the tactic of the main party, but again, it's usually more radical, more creative, and that's how the Kurdish movement decided to give youth the full autonomy. I think this is even more interesting model because this inclusion can sometimes be false, and autonomy will usually be real.
And I think it's very hard to unlearn the hierarchies that we have in the social structures, and age is one of the basic ones. So I think this autonomy is, I wouldn't say it's compromised, but it's a good solution when you know that unlearning all the hierarchies is not so easy yet.
Pablo and Ivan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, no, for me, I think it's great that children do have participation. But it's so interesting that the point that Syrena Collective made about the Rojava Revolution. Now, it reminds me of some educational experiences here in Spain during the 70s. During the times of the transition from the dictatorship to the so-called democracy, there were a lot of experiments in new ways to educate. So there was some cooperative school in where the children have have the chance to elect the contents and how to impart the contents and so on. I think that all the ways to increase participation from allies and so on is a kind of a good thing.
Maybe because we need to wrap up the conversation, unfortunately, but just the last thoughts on international solidarity. Do you think it's possible? And yeah, if you have like examples of successful, you know, solidarity across the countries, like if you could share some tips with the audience, how to form those alliances. Because Democracia, or maybe I'll start from you, like you quite often work in different political contexts.
Well, of course, we believe in internationalism and in international solidarity. No, I think that we can find examples of this kind of international solidarity throughout the world, you know. Did you say, for example, when no, I remember that kind of a slogan or graffiti from Greece to Poland, all of us are against police, you know. Even this kind of actions, of minimum actions, are showing a kind of international solidarity.
Thank you. And Syrena, what do you think? Can you see how international solidarity can be supportive of the cases in Poland at the moment?
So the first thing that I've seen as a direct action after this ruling that was made 2 days ago was graffiti on Polish embassy in Hague, in Netherlands. So somebody wrote them some words. What do the person thinks about them? And I think it's always a powerful image to see people that are not from your varied context, that are also feeling that they need to do something about it. They need to either somehow pass their strength to us. And it's also really nice, I think, when you go outside to the other countries, to talk with people and learn that they've shown this solidarity, that they did care when you're talking to them. So I think it's very empowering.
But I agree, but I would also like to add that solidarity in the first word especially sometimes turns into some sort of charity or compassion, like we are really sorry that you are so fucked, and we will just wave your flag for today. Tomorrow we'll wave some other. And I think that these forms of solidarity sometimes are just ineffective. I think I would cling to this slogan that Zapatistas did coin. Like, if you want to help us start your own revolution, organize in your own country, in your own city, and so on, this is the best form of support. And here I think the international exchange between movements should be targeted not at compassion or expressing our feelings only, but some form of circulation of struggle, circulation texts and so on, activists as well, to like share the assets that we have in some creative conglomerate.
I love that thought, and I think this is a great way to wrap up our conversation. Thank you so much for your time today and for your amazing contributions to the exhibition at Biennale Warszawa. And I would like everyone who's watching encouraged to visit the exhibition. It's open Friday till Sunday. And thank again Biennale Warszawa for being our amazing host and for creating this platform for us to speak. Paweł, would you like to add something?
Okay.
But I also like.
Thank you very much. Sorry for not being here, for not being there, and we want to thank the organization and the collective Syrena joining the project. And for us, it's very important they present because it's a kind of for the project to take soil, to take floor. Thank you very much.
And
Yes.
thank you as well. I think it's really good process that the cultural institution is taking some stance on the social struggles. I think it's very rare, and for so long the art was presenting itself as some sort of separated temple, where the social movements or struggles can only be interesting aesthetic material. And I think here, as I understand your approach as Biennale, you're trying to break this fourth wall and to actually do some organizational activist sort of work. And I think this is a good direction for the institutions of culture, and also an interesting direction for the social movements. So thank you again for that. I would say for that courage even.
Thank you very much. I think it's extremely important to construct, to build alliances at this particular moment, which is not easy, which is very complex. So, and I hope that we will be able to continue our work somehow, even in the period of pandemic and restrictions related with the pandemic. So thank you once again for your contribution, for your work, and for this conversation. Thank you.